Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've given a very warm welcome to Alexis, and I'd like to add mine. I've been corresponding with Alexis recently and sending him some notes, questions that I'd like to bring to him. And in my introduction, I was going to say actor, director, writer, producer, editor, cinematographer, and as well known as the prisoner himself in this classic series. I think whenever we think of the prisoner, the three faces that stand out are Patrick McGowan, Leo McKern, and Alexis Cannon. Right? And the initial question, of course, is how did you become involved with the prisoner?
This was completely Patrick and Dave Tomlin, and they called, and they said, come up and have a look at what's going on. And I did. I went up, and they had the beginnings of a script called Living in Harmony, and they said it's a Western, but the series we're making is not about that. It's about, and they told me, and it sounded fascinating. I went away and practiced a quick draw. Right. That was necessary.
I think, had David or Patrick seen you in anything in particular?
Yeah, I'm sure they did. And then one of these endless television programs, or maybe as Stone.
So, at this point, the first script that you went for was Living in Harmony, but it wasn't actually fully written at that point, was it?
It wasn't fully written, and to some extent it wasn't fully written even as we were filming it, because we were cutting stuff as we went, and eventually we cut the few lines I had because they were so rotten, and it was much more interesting if I didn't talk. There was a lot of talk about this quick draw business, and I thought I had got pretty good at it, but the trouble was that the director came over to me before we shot that scene, and he said, "Do you see where the camera is?" And I said, "Yes." I could tell there was something coming I wasn't going to like. He said, "The camera is right behind Patrick's hip, where his holster shows, and I need to be able to see his gun come out of his holster. However, that is the moment that the cameraman is going to zoom in on you past Patrick, and I need then to be able to see your gun come out of the holster." And I said, "What you're telling me is you want me to draw second." "Oh." He said, "Yes, but I want you to fire first." A lot of money had been gambled on this. People had put a lot of money on the sidelines on who was going to do it first. And when the guns went off, they were so close together that only one shot was heard. And nobody could collect their bet until the next day, when the film came back from the lab. And if you hold the film, because the film takes 24 pictures every second, you can see with your eye which revolver fires first. And at that stage, I think Patrick had taken 13 frames, which is just over half a second, and I had taken 9. And that's how it came about. And the kid was on trial, of course, for being a rebel. Rebels were not permitted in the village. Rebellion was not permitted in the village. And there was now a generation of people out there who were flower-powered and rebellious. And Patrick had sent me down to Carnaby Street and said, you can buy whatever you like to wear, providing you wear the top hat. Since that had become now a symbol of some kind. And that's sort of how it came about. We improvised the chase sequence in Fallout in a way that if the insurance company had known, they would have shut us down, because that was really just nuts. Patrick said, you have to get away from these guys, and you have to end up in front of the throne, so to speak. I'll be sitting in it myself. And I said, okay. And he said, I have enough cameras running for you to take any route you like. But these guys are very fit, don't be deceived. Now, this is not a rehearsal, you understand. This is not somebody suggesting an idea that we're going to work out. This is all the information I got. To the guys, stuntmen, he said something completely different. 100 quid to the first guy who puts a hand on him. And I don't care if you break his leg or you bring him down. And then he rolled the camera.
Hear the word of the Lord.
We knew that 4 of us were going to get out of this place alive. Myself and Angelo and Leo and Patrick. In fact, I said to Patrick, how are we going to manage this? And Patrick said, we'll shoot them all. And I said, isn't this aren't we, wait a minute, maybe I've missed the meeting here. Aren't we supposed to be, isn't this like a pacifist type of program, you know? And he said,
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this interview with Alexis as much as I have. It's just been great. Please tell me your appreciation.
So what were your impressions of Portmeirion since you've been here?
It's such a wonderful place to come and just find yourself, you know, and just enjoy the scenery, enjoy nature, enjoy the craziness of this guy who built it. It's just nice to be here.
And the crazy people that have come here.
Crazy people! You crazy folk!
Turning to The Prisoner, in a change of mind, as we've seen on the clips, you had to rough up Patrick Lagoon with John Hamlin. And it was originally to be directed by a chap called Roy Rizzotti, but Patrick McGowan took over for some reason. And were you aware of any problems in the direction at the time? Why McGowan took it on?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I didn't expect anything. It was just another job. And I know it sounds kind of passé to say that, but when I got there, I thought, well, it is another job. It's a very, very interesting kind of thing that's being done here. I'd never met that director, so I don't know quite what the situation was. And Pat Magoon only gave me one piece of direction, which in that scene where I'm stumbling around and trying to get out and grabbing the rope, he said, just slow it up a bit. But I thought, you go away and take care of your own role. I know what I'm doing. And he was right, of course. It's very hurried, very, very kind of out of the style of the whole thing. You know. But I'd seen a film called Madigan, where an actor played a very tough character, and when he got a final beating, he kind of fell to pieces, you know, emotionally. But it didn't fit into this really.
Well, several of the beatings that McGowan gets in The Prisoner are really quite extreme, quite severe for the time. I just wondered if he'd given any particular direction.
No, he didn't really. I mean, I'd have loved to have been in more episodes. You know, I mean, as a member of the village, I could have come back as anything, you know. But
yes,
I sent him a letter when I went to the Royal Shakespeare Company, which was a little while later, because I was absolutely sure that I was so good he was going to invite me back. So I wrote him a letter, you know, and I said, you know, I've gone to the Royal Shakespeare Company, but you know, they've nailed me to a sticking place, which was a Shakespearean line, you know. He never replied. But I'd love to have gone back and done something a little better. What was my number?
I don't know, but we might find out in a moment,
right.
At the end of this interview, because it's something that might give us the answer. You seem to be handling the stunts in that with John Hamlin pretty well, and there doesn't seem to be much need for these other two guys to come on and take over.
Well, that's true. I mean, the point is, it was a very straightforward fight. We were both quite physical, but they'd already paid the stuntmen to come in. And you know what it's like, they're on bonuses and this and that. It does look quite silly, really, you know. I mean, they picked two stuntmen that didn't look really anything like either of us, me and John Hamlin, you know.
No, I suppose the small screen then in black and white, people are less able to identify.
Listen, an arse looks big in black and white.
So did you manage over the years to watch any more of The Prisoner? Any of the other episodes?
Yeah, I mean, I catch up with them from time to time, and the whole thing was a total mystery to me when I first saw it, and I thought anything that is this adventurous, because we were really at a crossroads kind of period in British television at the time, and you know, we had the Dixon and Doc Green, and you know, all that kind of nonsense, and suddenly here was a new series that you had to sit down and think about what is it about, you know? And even if you didn't come up with a solid answer, you came up with an answer which interpreted something to your own life.
Yes. Because after The Prisoner, I think McGowan left and went over to Switzerland, then to the States, and he didn't really take on anything else in this same vein. The Prisoner, you can say it's either autobiographical or allegorical or just experimental. But there didn't seem to have been a great deal of TV like that since. Perhaps the medium hasn't allowed it because it's.
Well, I think there's only one story about that, isn't there? Somebody in prison who's psychologically kept there without the chains and things, you know. I think that he was kept there by psychology rather than borders and I think that's you can only tell that once, really. I mean, my thing about by consideration of The Prisoner, how would you go on, you know? I mean, the only thing I could think about is he gets to PortmeiriCon to get back to London on the train and you know, gives up.
Well, now before we just ask if people in the hall would like to ask you questions, let's just put you on the spot. Which was the better TV show, UFO or The Prisoner?
Well, I mean, if I'd have been in The Prisoner more, I would have liked that. I mean, I could have been a regular number there somewhere, you know. I mean, I don't know really. They deal with two different cerebral parts of the brain, you know. I mean, The Prisoner is very much inward searching, you know, with regard to your identification and, you know, all those things you told me to say yesterday.
Yeah.
Didn't believe a word. And UFO, which is very expansive and going outwards and dealing with the unknown and the future and time travel and things like that. You know, it's a different kind of ballgame. But I think they're both equally good. I mean, I'd love to have played a bigger part in The Prisoner.
Yeah.
I'd like to have played number 6. That's where I wore the jacket yesterday. But I mean, they're both very good series. I mean, it's hard to choose which is better.
Mm.
I think The Prisoner will always have a very big following because you have to think about it. Whereas UFO, you really don't think about it too much. You just go along for the ride, bit of a trip.
Well, I don't know. There's still some interesting aspects to UFO.
What?
Lots of.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Right, you will face the committee.
From there, I guess you probably did more television. We'll sort of move into areas that we're probably more familiar with to the audience here. ITC?
Yes, my very first job with ITC, I got a call from my agent and said, there's a casting director, are you interested in doing a show called Danger Man? I'd heard of it, and I said, well, that sounds good, yeah. And it's with this actor Patrick McGowan. I said, yes. And he's quite overwhelming, so, you know, you better be on your toes and everything. And I said, okay, well, that sounds like a good challenge. And I made sure that I got up there knowing all my lines and being Johnny on the spot and ready to go and everything else. And, you know, everyone said, Patrick's a bit frightening, you know, you better mind your P's and Q's. And sure enough, this extraordinary, charismatic man strode onto the set, and I thought, wow, because he's incredibly good looking and dynamic. And I thought, well, okay, let's go for it. And he was so fantastic to work with. I mean, he really was. It was like I don't know, the energy and the power that just came from him, and it just sort of dragged you up to go with it. It was fabulous. I loved it.
I mean, one thing that we have heard over the years is that to be a female actor, is that right? Or actress?
Well, actress, we all call different things nowadays.
Female actor, whatever. Quite often I had a hard time from him.
Yeah, he didn't. First of all, Patrick never suffered fools gladly, so it didn't matter whether you're male or female, you better be on your toes.
Yeah.
And secondly, I'd heard that he was not particularly comfortable with actresses. I thought, you know, he found us a sort of a rather strange breed of women, that what we were doing, dressing up rather like, you know, maybe tarts and stuff like that, and you know, trancing around and doing our thing. So I can't say that I felt that he wholeheartedly approved of actresses. Plus, he was never that super comfortable with them. But we got on all right. We managed to do it.
Can you remember that scene?
I do remember it, yes.
Yeah.
I remember it very well.
Thoughts about, you know, what was going through your head when that was happening?
I just remembered that I loved working with Patrick, and the stronger the actor that you're working with, male or female, the better you're going to be. Yes. I mean, I've worked with some pretty good actors in my career. I've been very, very lucky. And, you know, when you get an actor against you or playing with you, regardless of the relationship, if they've got that kind of dynamic energy, which Patrick has, it's only going to make you better.
That's good. You did a lot of things with ITC, haven't you? Man in the Suitcase, The Baron, The Saint,
yes.
London Hopkirk, all of those.
Yeah, I mean, Roger Moore was a lovely man, but he was completely different from Patrick. Different character he was playing and everything else. And therefore it was a sort of, one had developed a different kind of acting relationship. Some of the other people were talking about in the other shows, it was never quite the same as it was with Patrick. The Prisoner was quite a cerebral show. It was not a sexual show in any shape or form. but there's nothing wrong with that. There's still a strong communication there, if it's between minds or whether it's between bodies. But this was between minds, and that's what the show was about.
How did you get that particular part? Did that come into Danger Man? Or?
I think so, yes. Again, because I think Patrick enjoyed working with me, and this was another show where we had to have a kind of mental telepathic relationship, and a sort of connection, as it were, an emotional connection, if you will. And I think that's where it came from.
Yeah, so he probably would have said,
so we'll have
I recommend that we have Jane for this one.
Yeah, he might have done, yes. I'm not sure. I never asked him.
Okay. So again, you have this quite strong character working with McGowan and working quite well. By that time, was it any different? I know that he did a lot on The Prisoner, producing, directing, and starring. He must have been under immense pressure. I just wondered if that maybe changed any of the relationship.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think he was always under lots of pressure, even when we were doing Danger Man, because it was the kind of pressure he put himself under.
Yeah, sure.
He was a complete perfectionist. And these were his sort of, these were shows that were really important to him. Obviously The Prisoner even more so, because he'd written so much of it and was producing it. But I don't think it really changed the way he worked. I mean, he always worked consistently the same way, which was intensely and energetically.
Yes. I mean, it's interesting to watch as the show developed. I mean, your character came in at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. Yeah. And it's quite interesting to see that there was that rapport there, and it's quite a strong part. It really is.
Yeah.
Was the atmosphere like on set? I mean, I know you said, as far as you're concerned, nothing has changed, but was it a charged atmosphere?
No, not really. I mean, it was just, we had this incredible production. No, he was the first AD, our first assistant director, called Dave Tomlin. And Dave went on to work with Steven Spielberg on all his,
Indiana Jones and
the Indiana Jones films and other big films with him. Dave was amazing. He was so professional, and he kept it all together. He was a sort of solidifying factor. And I think Patrick relied on him for that tremendously. I mean, he was the unifying factor. And if things started to go off course or off tangent a little bit, Dave would bring us right back to where we were supposed to be and keep us focused and working and on time. And because of the relationship was so good between them, it worked fantastically on the set. I think there were some ructions with the top office of the people we never saw. Both on Danger Man and on The Prisoner, but that never fed itself back to us. Now, I heard stories that when he was doing the show with Leo McKern, it got so intense that it actually affected Leo emotionally quite a bit. I think he did not deal with it eventually. It wasn't his relationship with Patrick, it was just the intensity of the work. And I think that really got to him in the end. So I've heard.
Yes, I mean, I had a nervous breakdown or something on the set.
Whether it probably was nothing to do with the shows, but someone's already got issues in their life, and it doesn't take very much something to just push them over the edge. And I think that the intensity of working with Patrick did in fact do that.
Okay.
Because I worked with Leo after that, I think, and he was fine.
Yeah, what did you work on?
I did a film with him called The Appointment, and I was playing his gangster girlfriend. He was the bad guy, and I was his gangster girlfriend.
Yeah, well, he's a great character as well.
He was lovely. Very funny.
And then this sort of led to you appearing in Danger Man.
Yeah, well, we worked together in Danger Man quite a few things, yeah. I always got on very, very well with Patrick McGowan. He wasn't a guy to talk very much, and, but he was he was very professional. He got on with what he had to do, and you go on the set and we get rehearse the scene and we do it, you know. He was that sort of person. But I think he had some degree of respect for me as an actor, so he showed me a fair amount of respect, I would say, generally speaking.
Well, not only were you extremely good looking, but you could really act.
Hey, well, I don't understand this. What do you mean I was good looking? And these sort of parts were coming pretty regularly then, around that time, yeah.
And with all your appearances in Danger Man, you were subsequently called up for The Prisoner.
Yeah, I think partly because I met George Markstein, who was one of the writers, lovely guy, and he had a little to do with the casting, I think, also. He wrote some of the stories, and I don't think Patrick McGowan had anything to do with my casting. As you knew more about this. Tell
Okay.
a little about this story of Prisoner.
George Markstein was the script editor, and in his words, is the man that carried the ethos of the series. And with the early scripts, he did try to make it more cosmopolitan.
Mm-hmm.
And the author of Schizoid Man, Terence Feely, wanted to write the village as a cosmopolitan village, which is why you have an Indian speaking part in it. It's only one line, but there's an Indian speaking part. And why he also introduced you, because he wanted a black actor in it. Really, it's not a major role, but it's an integral one. I suppose really that would probably be a day, maybe 2 days up in Bournemouth.
I think it was a couple of days, that's all. 3 at the most, I can't remember, too long ago, but at the time, I think George Markstein wanted me to be in a few more of those episodes, but for some reason or other, nothing to do with me personally, but I think Patrick saw it differently. He saw that this type of thing, it was not a sort of universal thing, or you know, he was far from any racist or anything, nothing like that, but he's just had a different look at the thing. You said from the beginning that they wanted to make it more universal, didn't you? Or did you say that, something like that?
Yes, I mean more or less. George came up with the original premise for The Prisoner, and McGowan saw it as a way of...
So in a different way, yes.
Yes, I mean, for him it was an escape. In a way you could say one man saw it as an escape series, the other one saw it as an escape from a TV series.
Right.
McGowan wanted to get away from Danger Man. But when they got together, George saw it one way and Patrick saw it a different way, and so they split, and obviously poor George had to go.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Anyhow, that's it. But The Prisoner was something that I would have loved to have been right through it, you know, or several. It was, you know, it's such a clever written thing and so unusual. It's got this mystery about it that it's fascinating, and people love it for that reason. But like a friend of mine I know in Kenilworth, he said he saw all of the episodes, but he still can't understand what it's all about. I think that's
we're all here.
That is the answer, you see. That's what makes it so intriguing, and you can use all your imagination for it. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I'm so happy that it's still going on, and the people so fascinated as we all are about The Prisoner.
Yes, it has got this longevity. And something else, he said, very, very smooth, did you notice that? That's got longevity is the James Bond series. And you appeared in Thunderball, didn't you?
Right, yeah.
Which must have been quite a nice part.
Yes, not a big part, again. A nice part, very nice part. I had 7 delightful weeks down in Nassau, mostly lying on the Nassau beach. And in fact, they got to a stage when the second assistant would come on and says, "Well, Errol, I think we're going to need you." And I thought, oh my God, do I have to go? Not quite, but I mean, I was enjoying it so much. So that was the best part of it. That time, it was about the 4th of the Bond pictures.
So just that's one of the roles in the series, of all the episodes, that's particularly loved by 601 members. You saw some of the announcement this morning. It must have been an interesting role for you to get the teeth into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did it come about?
This was because I worked in a Danger Man, and I noticed, even though I've only just seen a bit of the series, but this is only the second time I've seen this movie this morning, this one, but I noticed
that's two more than Jim Caviezel. That's two more than Jim Caviezel.
Now what I noticed is that quite a number of people who were in Danger Man, Patrick has taken note of them because he appreciated them as actors, and he's tucked them away somewhere in the back of his mind for when he would have his own thing. And there they are, quite a lot. He wrote this character apparently speaking a foreign language, which is gibberish. But it must seem
You've
real.
shot their illusions now.
No,
my illusion.
The point is, it must be real. So you must know what you mean when, at any time you're speaking, you must know what you feel and what you mean, and then it will seem absolutely real. And that is fun to do. It's a fun exercise. My brother had a friend at university who married a Croat girl, which is through Eastern Europe. In those days we didn't know much about Eastern Europe, and we felt it was all generally suspect because it was behind the Iron Curtain. So I thought it would be good to have a tinge of that kind of accent. It's not very logical, but that doesn't matter in this thing. This show is not to be logical. It is to make you feel things, give you shocks and surprises. I don't know if you agree, but that's what I feel. And to shock you into realising things. And so that's why I chose that. I probably didn't stick to it faithfully, but it provided a basis for me.
Well, I think we can see a little bit about how that came across with the first clip, I think. Can we show that one, please?
In that case, I mean, it doesn't matter what it means. What she's trying to do is work him into a state, which happens in other places. You know, she's just using it to work him into a state, which it does, and he goes,
And that's where I think it does come across about what you were saying earlier about keeping it real. It's like, you know, it's gibberish.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter what it means. It's the effect of that bang, 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 bang of the words. You know.
So that's earlier on in that story, and the tension starting to build, the effect that you're having on the Six's character. When you start reading that, when you first read the script and you saw that, what was your initial thoughts
Reading
about
that scene?
Yeah.
The same as now. But that's what it's for.
So in terms of then how it builds from there, there's more sort of tension building, there's more this sort of the effect you're having on number 6's character, but you're still coming across as this very just overly keen to have in his face, where he gets frustrated and he can't even get rid of you. And I mean, how you both wrote this and directed it, obviously starring in it. How was that on the set? Did you see him?
When you're only on the set, you're another actor. He's an actor. You don't think about him directing it or having written it. You're staying in your character, and he's got to I don't know what he's got to do, but he's got to act the part, otherwise it's not going to work.
How did it compare? I know we'll come a bit later on to the Danger Man experience you've had, but was it a consistent experience in terms of working with the gun or the prisoner as it was with Danger Man? The same sort of...
Oh no, very different, because he's just in the prisoner, and not in the Danger Man. His responsibility is purely the acting, and so he had time to sit and talk.
So you got less of that in the prisoner?
Oh, he didn't get any at all, because he's much too busy. But in the Danger Man, we were just sitting on the side waiting for our turn, and he did talk, and he was very open and frank and regretful in a way about doing, I'm afraid, the Danger Man because he got stuck in it, as it were. I mean, I suppose the money was very tempting. Apparently he was the highest paid actor around at that time on TV. And it meant that years were passing, and here he was just turning out Danger Man, and he could have been acting on the stage or something. I'm saying this now because Patrick isn't here, but I wouldn't have said it if he was still alive, you know. And he was just open about it, very frank. That's the main thing I remember. I can't remember much of the rest of the conversation. That's what struck me.
Fascinating. So in the prisoner, he was getting a chance at least to...
Well, he was exercising much more of himself, and also he was putting something across, wasn't he? I mean, he got the sort of message, which was, to me, very obvious, particularly in this film, which has something to do with us. We should be more watchful, because I think, say, before the Second World War, there was more deference towards people up there in power, elected, or the royal family, or aristocracy, or whoever they were, and that they must be right because they've been there for a long time, you know, and even the ones who vote in, they're there quite a long time, and they know best, and they're governing people. And then Patrick was putting seeds of doubt and rebellion. His character's very rebellious.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to give a very warm 6 of 1 and Portmeirian welcome to the one, the only, the fantastically beautiful, outrageous Justine Lord!
So, how did your appearance in The Girl Who Was Deaf come about?
Because I'd done a lovely play for Mr. Tomlin, and he asked me to be in the prisoner, which I was delighted to accept.
And so, were you sent a script for The Girl Who Was Deaf? What was the procedure?
I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember. I wouldn't have thought that there would have been much of a script, because a lot of it was sort of things that you did on the spot. You turned up on location and they said, now, this is what we want. It wasn't written down, really, I don't think.
It wasn't written down?
No.
It was still kind of unfolding?
Yes.
Ad lib?
That's what I remember. I might be wrong, but I think that's what it is. the bit that was written down was obviously the great bit of dialogue where Pat is on the scene, being blown up, more or less, and I'm trying to blow him up. But that was all written down, and that I did off. I just did the soundtrack for that, and missed.
I'll tell you what, we'll see the clips. You have a look, because you haven't seen this for some time, have you?
No.
Okay, here we are. You're in for a treat. For the viewer, it looked like a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. It was great fun.
That's a very strong role, isn't it?
Yes, it was jolly heavy at the bazooka. I wouldn't recommend it, actually.
You started off, I think, doing the scenes at the fairground. Is that right?
Yes.
What do you remember of that?
Super, because I was only there to sort of do an odd shot, and I said, foolishly, I would like to do the doubling for the, what do you call the things that are difficult to do?
Stunt double.
Stunt stuff. So they said, well, they'd made a dress which they were going to give to the stunt girl, and they had to, I more or less took it off her to do all the stuff that we did at Southend, apart from that amazing sequence that she did in the front car standing up with one hand. She held onto the front rail. She had, I think, a scarf in the other hand. She did it, I think, 3 or 4 times, and she was standing in the front car. And I had a go at the end of the day because, you know, I said, could I have a go on the what's it called?
The Big Dipper.
The Big Dipper. It is, anybody who hasn't done it has to do it just to know, it is absolutely terrifying. I don't know how fast they go. You have all the breath knocked out of you. It is unbelievable. You're screaming because you can't do anything else. And that girl did that stunt, standing up in the front car. I mean, that's no way, that to me, it was professionalism. In fact, it's a mixture of my stuff that I just happened to have. And the compact was a PortmeiriCon compact. The hat, the helmet, we happened to find when we were walking around the clothes hire place, like you do. I mean, I don't know what we were looking for. I have no idea what we were looking for. And we saw this thing, and I popped it on, like you try on things, because it's like a jungle sale really, you try on things as you go around. And we said, oh, that's not bad. And that's how I got that lovely helmet, the German helmet. Trouser suit was mine. The thing like Deb's is wearing, that was mine. Thank you.
Any more questions?
When you were doing the Golden Day, was your performance as per the script, or were you able to put any extra lines in yourself?
No, because there's very little talking in The Prisoner. It's all a lot of voiceover. There's not really, the scenes aren't really played out as scenes. They're doing, it's really me speaking over the action. So in fact, that's all written down for you. That's not something that you can mess around with because it has to fit in with the action. Particularly in the last section where he's going through the house and it's all falling about around his ears, and that had to be very carefully slotted in to the action that was going on, like him falling through floorboards and what have you. And I did the voiceovers for all that long sequence. Perhaps the wee was wee. That was perhaps that was something involuntary wee.
That was what made me think of the question when we were watching it. I thought, I wondered if you...
Oh, I think that was probably me. Yeah. Too good to miss.
And I know the order is, the actual projected screening order is a major matter of discussion, and has been for 40 years. Was there an order? And yes, indeed, there was an order, but often the TV companies didn't adhere to the order as presented to them, which is why, along with one other factor, which I'll mention in a minute, which is why they've never, as far as I know, been shown in the prescribed everyman order. So instead of Decree Absolute playing after Chimes of Big Ben, which would have given it a continuity in number 2s, it was dropped to be the penultimate episode before Fallout, and that's where it is to this day. But it was never originally intended to be there, it just wasn't finished. So I can give you what was the prescribed running order, which I don't think has ever been used in any of the screenings anywhere in the world or any DVD release. And I will also name the director, because as I do it, you will see how it makes economic sense and story sense, and as I know you know the episodes, fictional sense. Let's just be clear on the title. The first page of script, and I didn't get more than a page at a time, none of us did, was Decree Absolute. And Decree Absolute with a C is a divorce proceeding. And that is what that episode is about. One of them, and we know it's not going to be number 6, is going to be divorced from life. And of course it's to be number 2. But it doesn't work if you bring him back for the last episode. So that's why they had to shoot a new ending, and that's why it shifted because of Leah's illness in the order. This order, the working order, is the prescribed screening order thematically. And this is how they should have been shown. Have you all got your pens and papers, boys? Because I think this is...
And your phones.
I think we're looking 45 years on, and I don't think anyone's ever said this. And I know there's been much discussion. The first one was Arrival, directed by Don Chaffee. Now, I will name the director no matter whose name appears on the credit. Which brings us to the second one, which was Free for All, directed by Don Chaffee. And then Dance of the Dead, directed by Don Chaffee. And then it was delivered as The Queen's Pawn, but they changed it to Checkmate, directed by Don Chaffee. They were the only 4 that were shot in toto in Portmeirion. After Checkmate, the first one in the studio, or they were finishing up The Queen's Pawn, which is when I had my interview. But the first one to be shot totally in the studio was Chimes of Big Ben, directed by Don Chaffee. The next one, continuing Leo, was to be Once Upon a Time, which is Decree Absolute, directed by Patrick McGowan, the first one he directed. But that wasn't finished for reasons that I've alluded to. So after Chimes of Big Ben, the next one that should have been shown in sequence is The Schizoid Man, directed by Pat Jackson. After that, A Change of Mind, directed by Patrick McGowan. While, of course, Pat was preparing A, B and C, which was the next one. They had the sets, they had the stock shots, they had no script. So that's when It's Your Funeral happened. And the next one was The General, directed by Peter Graham Scott, who really didn't want to do it for all sorts of reasons. Then, is the speed all right for you, Gary? I don't know. Your apple car, yeah. And then Hammer into Anvil, which was directed by David Tennant, which of course led to Patrick McGowan taking over, in fact, he directed all of Many Happy Returns. After I'd been preparing it with Michael Truman. After Many Happy Returns comes the episode in which Pat isn't, which is Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling. Why that title? That was the title I'd given to what became Living in Harmony from Ian Rakoff's script, because it was High Noon, Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling. And David and Pat co-opted it for that episode. I can't remember who has the director credit on that. I think it's Pat Jackson again. Then there was Living in Harmony, which was directed by David Tomlin and also produced by David Tomlin and also allegedly written by David Tomlin. And I'm amazed David Tomlin didn't even play the Frank Mayer part because that was David Tomlin's cover outfit that he's wearing. And then Decree Absolute was placed in, but remember, it was already shot apart from a few sequences. So when Pat came back, there wasn't much work to do on it, which made it easy for Pat to do a few days and to deliver an episode once the series, and it had already started airing, and then Fallout. And that is the order. If you've written that down, that is the prescribed order. And as far as I know, nowhere was that adhered to. But if you see them in that order, it all makes sense. And if you see them in that order, Fallout is by no means, which words do you want me to use? Ludicrous, absurd, experimental, surreal is a good one. It all makes sense. You've had all the themes, the musical themes planted before that. You've had allusions. You've had everything. The only thing that sticks in my personal craw is I don't think Kenny Griffith should have been in because he played a clear character in one I haven't mentioned, which was the girl who was deaf. And I'm never sure myself, I didn't work on it, so I'm never sure, but I have a feeling that that is the one before the penultimate one, and that's where it should go. After Living in Harmony and before I Once Upon a Time. Yeah.
Wow.
Because they have to dress the studio, so you know it's best that you shoot somewhere completely different.